Ulster and Leinster. And we also have 8 qualifiers. We're going to concentrate, I think, on the provincial finals, and we'll see where we go from there time-wise. Mossy, Dublin against Laois in the Leinster final. Dublin looking for an 8th consecutive Leinster title. This year, they haven't even had to beat a team from the top 2 divisions as they progress through the Leinster Championship. The main talking point seems to be around Stephen Cluxton's fitness. 14 years since he missed the championship game. He may still play. If he doesn't, Evan Comerford comes in for his first start. Did play a good chunk of the game against Longford. I'm sure you've come up against Evan Comerford quite a bit in the club game.
Yeah, a couple of times. Well, he's a young guy. He's 19, he's 20 this year, but he's been playing for Ballymun for the last couple of years, and he was in goal. We played him in a county final last year, and he played in a quarter final against us, I think, 2 years before that as well. So it's funny, like I was actually looking at it, like I just said, he's 19, 20, and you think Stephen's been starting for Dublin in goal since 2001. So if you think like Evan's grown up since he was, before he could even work out what a Dublin footballer was, Stephen's been the goalkeeper. So he's grown up looking at him, and when you watch him playing, there's a lot of similarities in terms of how he plays as a goalkeeper. He likes to get his kick-outs off quick. He's left-footed. He's a confident striker of the ball, and Stephen's obviously the benchmark, and Evan's been looking at it for a long time, and he's had the last year or two now underneath him, training with Dublin and getting coached by the same goalkeeping coach and going through the same drills. So it's a massive step up for Anthony's had to date, but he's a big prospect, and I think there's a lot of people in Dublin, while no one wants Stephen not to be playing, they're excited to see what Evan can do.
Yeah, I was thinking of maybe a Joey Carberry, Johnny Sexton style comparison, and people say, well, Joey Carberry's his own guy, he needs to be his own out half, but actually Joe Schmidt just wants him to be just like Johnny Sexton. I guess Jim Gavin, while Evan Comerford has his own qualities, he wants him to be just like Stephen Cluxton, that he can sit in, that he can send the kickouts to the exact same position, that they can just keep the level.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of the time, particularly with a position like goalkeeper, you've got a couple of fundamental things that you want to keep going the same. And I think one of the things Dublin like getting off is quick kickouts. I don't think that will change. They'll be looking to get the ball back in play as quick as they can.
And they're often quite risky kickouts. They're right to the line, which on an inexperienced keeper adds a little bit more pressure.
It does, and look, the big question is, teams nearly give Stephen so much respect, which he's obviously earned over the years, that they don't press an awful lot on Dublin kickouts. And the question will be obviously how much Laois press the kickouts, and see, like, will they test Evan? Will they see if they force him into that? And you'd imagine they will to some extent. Like if Dublin have, say, 30 odd kickouts in a game, I don't think there's any realistic chance that they can come out winning a game or being competitive in a game if they give up the kickouts every time. And they have to choose where they think it's realistic to get a press on him, to try and force him into those decisions where he's wondering, well, can I get it to the cornerback? Can I get it to a wing back into those pockets, or can they force him to just kick it long down the middle, which would probably be his last resort?
And we're probably at a stage of the season where Jim Gavin is reading as much into the training games as he is the championship games, but he does have some selection headaches coming down the line rather quickly, with Keane O'Sullivan and Jack McCaffrey getting back to full fitness. If they are fully fit, are they automatic selections?
No, I don't think that's the way Jim Gavin will work it. I think Dublin seem to have had, in a similar way to Brian Cody ran Kilkenny, in that a player, if you've got the jersey and you're playing up to what Jim Gavin wants you, and the team is performing well, then I would imagine you hold on to that jersey. We've seen it last year. Jeremy Connolly obviously wasn't rushed back in. Now that probably is part of the reason why he is left this year. But essentially, Dublin have a wealth of talent, and it's only fair. You can't just keep hauling the boys back in. He has never done that over any time. Like right from 2011, they have kept changing that team up, and because of that, there's a wealth of talent. Because of that, any young boy coming in that's showing his mettle then gets a chance. Like Brian Fenton came out of essentially nowhere and is now one of their stalwarts. So for the likes of Keane O'Sullivan and Jack McCaffrey, I think he will know what he has with them. But unless there's a problem on the pitch, he'll not be rushing them boys back in, because it's part, I would imagine, of that Dublin ethos and of the in-house games and of all of that sort of competitive thing, trying to keep so many talented boys happy, is that if a boy gets in and doing well, you cannot put him back in the bench just because somebody more established comes in. And I think that has been a secret to Dublin's ability to just keep rolling in these new young boys all the time without any weakening of the side at all.
And Brian Fenton just seems to go to another level every season. We think, can he go any further? And he's upped it again. He seems to be adding to his scoring prowess this season. And Michael Darmacawley has come back into the side, looks fresh, looks rejuvenated, looks to be making a real impression. So James McCarthy's been playing a lot of the time at centre-back. If Keane O'Sullivan comes in, Mossy, what is the preferable centre-back midfield partnership? Does Macaulay have to go back to that impact sub-role?
That's the big question, I think, around Dublin. I think Mick is playing, it looks like he's playing with a chip on his shoulder this year for me. He kind of, I'd say, he was highly frustrated with his lack of game time towards the end of the championship last year, and he's come back and he's played a lot of league games, he had a lot of minutes under his belt. And I think the way the Super 8s are going to go, I think you'll see, obviously with a lot of games over a short period of time, I think teams will interchange a bit more. But I think that's probably the big question, where you see James McCarthy. James is so versatile. I think when Keane gets himself back fit, Keane's going to end up back at 6, and then it's just, again, similarly, I think it's hard not to play Jack for the pace what he brings, particularly going forward in terms of, I think, the goal scoring opportunities he creates from his ability to break past players and create overlaps, you know. And John Small is another guy who's missed the last couple of games with injury. I think he's back close to fitness, and he's added a bit of steel to that Dublin defence in the last couple of years. So there's a huge competition for places there. And the question, Michael Dara is probably the big question in terms of on form. He absolutely deserves to maintain where he is. And again, I think James will stay in the half-back line, but over the Super 8s you might see that being mixed up a little bit.
And I guess that one of the ways that Jim Gavin is so exceptional is his ability to manage a squad and to reward somebody like Michael Darmacawley, who does have a chip on his shoulder, who can set an example to guys who are 16 to 35 in a Dublin squad, that actually, if you do come back, if you do have a point to prove, if you do get yourself to another level, I will reward you, I will let you back in.
Yeah, well Michael Darmacawley is a perfect case in point. He was the hot midfielder. He was Dublin's Brian Fenton right at the start of this run that Dublin have been on. He lost form. Yes, he was injured and whatnot, but basically he lost form and he was left off the team, and he only got time here and there. In fact, plenty of games he didn't get any time at all. And he's obviously worked very, very hard in the winter. Now, all credit to him for a man that has already won what he has won, to decide to knuckle down and to push to come back again, which is tough at his stage, and to hunt down that essentially one midfield slot. Like the likes of McCarthy is very flexible. He can play multiple positions. You sort of have to, looking in from the outside, have to presume that Brian Fenton is one of them midfield slots nailed down. So Michael Darmacawley put all his eggs in a basket to work very hard over the winter, and the mental strength of that is impressive. But equally, Jim Gavin has stuck through the principles. He has shown form, and so he's come back in again. It wasn't a sense, and sometimes I thought that, particularly last year with Kevin McManaman and Bernard Brogan and Michael Darmacawley and Paul Flynn and all these amazing players sitting on the bench, that he was sort of almost proving a point and not giving the older players a chance. But in fairness to him, Michael Dara has stood up, put his hand up very strongly, and Jim Gavin has put him back in. So again, it seems to be just very, very fair with Jim. It's on merit that you get in there, and it'll be on merit that you'll stay there.
Is there any point in even watching this game, Enda? We've seen Dublin cruising through these games during Leinster. We know they're going to win it by 12, 13 points. They may have a 20-minute spell where they fall a bit flat, but ultimately they're going to win this game quite comfortably. Is there anything Laois can do? Is there anything you've seen any side outside the top 2 or 3 in this country do to Dublin that disrupts them for any more than a 10, 15-minute spell?
12, 13 points, you're taking Dublin is going to have an off day, are you?
17 points is the spread.
Yeah. For me, I suppose, look, I'm a football man. I love watching football. I love watching talented football. So there's always something really impressive to see the level that Dublin are playing at. Yes, there's a jealousy thing there. There's a inevitability thing that isn't great. It's not entertaining when it's not competitive. But seeing how they go about their business, seeing these top players play together in that fashion, we haven't seen it very often over all the years of the association. There's only been a couple of teams of this level. So there is still something to watch there for me. For Laois, it is that old caveat. Teams have been criticised for coming out and being so defensive against Dublin that they don't really have any ambition to go and win it themselves. But for me, you have to keep it really, really tight. You have to be fairly negative at the start to just not be blown away and be caught like a rabbit in the headlights, which is what Dublin do best. At least keep it competitive for a while. And if that means you have to be very defensive and pretty negative, well then so be it. Dublin are big enough boys to be able to deal with that. Laois, the old high ball thing, every Gaelic football team, coaches love using the high ball and saying that a team's weak under a high ball. A high ball for any team is difficult to deal with. If Stephen Cluxton is out, that'll be another reason for Laois, obviously with their full forward line. It'll be another reason for them to go plenty with high ball. Dublin have let in a couple of goals in the past, but inevitably if you put in enough high ball, something's going to come of it. It's just not a very effective tactic over a whole course of a game. You need to have more strings to the bow. But no, Laois aren't going to trouble Dublin significantly. Are Dublin still good to watch? Absolutely. I hope for Laois that they get a really, because they've done great work this year. They've made great progress over the year or two now. They've plenty of players playing really well. It's great to see the likes of Colin Begley and Ross Munley back playing well again. But this is going to be a step too far. What I hope is it's not a very damaging defeat, that it's a respectful defeat, so to speak, so at least can still have something there to go and build on.
So after Sunday, Mossy, we could be talking about a one-sided Leinster final, and whether there's any point watching that, and an Ulster final that I fear already is going to get slated regardless of the quality. It could be the tightest, tensest, most enthralling, pulsating game of the season. But is it going to be a very defensive affair, the clash of Fermanagh and Donegal? Is Rory Gallagher going to go out with the exact same template that saw them beat Monaghan in the semi-final?
You'd imagine so. Well, it's what's worked for them this year, and they're performing for a high level for themselves in terms of they're getting the most out of themselves. It worked for them in the league, and they've brought that into championship. And they'll, again, similar to what Enda was saying, at least it suits Fermanagh to keep it a close, low-scoring game. Donegal have showed this year with some of the calibre of attacking players that they have. And look, Rory Gallagher will know them better than anyone, so he'll try and put a system in place to try and limit that. And, you know, if it means that they can turn it into a dogfight which ends 12-10 or 11-9, they're content to do that. Once it comes into the last 5-10 minutes where they're competitive and they're within a chance of winning it, I think that's their primary goal, is get themselves to those last 10 minutes where they're still in the game.
Monaghan fought their way back into that semi-final and looked as if they were going to win until Fermanagh scored that late goal. Do Donegal have a bit more nous, a bit more flair that can break down this blanket defence than Monaghan do?
Possibly. They're probably a bit more balanced. Obviously you could maybe argue like for like you've Conor McManus and Paddy McBurty are the kind of marquee corner forwards on either team, and then but the likes of Michael Murphy obviously can score from distance. Even the likes of the young guys, Kieran Thompson can score from distance, or McNeilish. So like Donegal have some really classy footballers who you think will be able to pick off scores if they do have to shoot from that 30-40 yard mark. And the one thing is, like, I thought back, if you think to the last league game where Donegal were in a position, they were in the game against Mayo and they needed to close that out. It was a tight game, and they made a couple of bad decisions when they had the ball in hand when they were in possession that allowed Mayo to get back and get that draw and sneak that draw, which meant Mayo were safe. And you'd imagine that's one of the things they've probably reviewed and they'd like to learn from, because they could find themselves in a situation like that where they're in the game, but you have to make those and again, it was some of their bigger players made bad calls on that day. So again, that's one of the things they'll be looking at going into this to make sure they don't repeat that.
Yeah, and is a game like this for Donegal, is it almost as much a mental battle as anything else? On paper they are a superior side to Fermanagh. They have more talent, they can rack up big scores, but they know that Fermanagh are going to make their life absolute hell, that it's probably going to be a 1 or 2 point game for the vast majority of this match, that you just need to keep your head. Is that something that as a coach and as a manager and as a group of players can be more difficult to work on?
It's more difficult because they're expected to win this game, and this is something for them to just get done there in a no-win situation. And yet, for the big thing for Donegal is there is still question marks over these players, because a lot of, yes, they've got a small sort of group or cohort of experienced players, but they've an awful lot of young new players, the likes of Thompson, the likes of Langan, the likes of Cian Mulligan, the likes of Van Gallagher. Brilliant players. Like I really like the look of this Donegal team. But they were really good in last year's National League, really good in the Championship up until they played Tyrone, and then they got whitewashed by Tyrone, and then they got whitewashed by Galway. 2 hammerings for a team that at that stage people were really starting to talk about. So we're back this year again. They've had, although they got relegated, they had they took a lot of credit from the National League campaign. They've changed their style a wee bit. They're no longer really purely a counter-attacking team. They're really a team that's all about their forward line because of the talent that they have up there. So they have changed the approach, and maybe the National League with winter football isn't going to suit the way Donegal are playing at the minute, and maybe we're seeing more of their level now, but still they're due big tests, and we have to see, do this new young group stand up? Is Sunday going to be that test? I'm not convinced it is. Fermanagh is going to be hugely negative. I think you're absolutely right. It is a mental thing. It's going to be a different type of test for them. But I don't think it will really test their mental in terms of what this team can eventually go on to achieve. It's going to test their patience. It's going to test their discipline. Fermanagh will know how to get under Donegal's skin. Rory Gallagher will have enough notes on every one of them players. I think the sideline battle is going to be...
Ricey might have an idea as well, Enda, would he?
Pardon?
Ricey might have an idea as well, would he?
Ricey and Rory, now they're a brave combination. Both of them are very animated on the sideline. Like,
the Tyrone lads are too busy fighting with themselves at the moment to be worried about anyone else.
No comment. Paddy McKeever of Armagh got sent off because of an interaction with Gallagher, where Gallagher had essentially been on one of the Armagh, I think it was Forker's, back all day over along his sideline. And then he got injured, and Paddy McKeever was in, and Gallagher had more words there again at him. And Gallagher's good at getting under people's skin. Ricey isn't too innocent either, I would have to admit. And Declan Bonner, in fairness to Donegal, I know when he was over the under-21s, there was a couple of encounters with Tyrone where Peter Canavan and Brian Dure on the sideline, and it wasn't too friendly there either. So I don't think this game is going to be too friendly. I suppose no championship game is, but I'd be worried that this could be particularly feisty for Donegal. As the big team, as the leading team, they're going to have to keep their discipline. And they've a brilliant inside line, and as Mossy was saying, they can also shoot from distance. The likes of Oran McNeilis, the likes of Murphy, obviously, and I think that combination is more than what Monaghan brought to the table. For Donegal, the fear is losing Neil McGee at full back when you're coming up against a full forward line of the Quigleys and of Colin Jones. A very physical full forward line might be a concern and an area that Fermanagh can get at them, but Fermanagh is going to defend and make this as tight as possible, which they should do, because if this is a shootout, Donegal win with ease.
What do you do with Michael Murphy in a game like this against a blanket defence? Do you pull him out and have him around the midfield, and he almost acts like a quarterback? He's so skillful, he's got such an awareness that he can pick out the right passes, he can maybe drag the Fermanagh defence out? Or do you want him a bit closer to goal where chances are going to be at a premium and you want them falling to your best players?
Yeah, I think you have to mix it up a bit and try and force the Fermanagh defence a couple of different looks. I think it's okay to have him in full forward for a couple of plays and maybe let it into himself, McBurty. But the reality is there's going to be a lot of bodies back. It's going to be hard to get clean shots off. Now, if he does win one in over the top, he might get a chance at goal. But you could bring him out and even have him out at the centre forward spot, where when Fermanagh, they'd like to drop a lot of bodies back and they kind of create a line across the 45. Even if you have Murphy playing in between a 65 and a 45 from an attacking perspective, he can see in terms of if they have runners coming at speed, he can come on the loop then get on the shoulder, so that if they bring it into contact, he can be the guy getting it and possibly in that position to take that long range shot. And again, it's likely they'll probably put a man marker on him and have someone dogging him everywhere he goes, but look, that's nothing new. He's been dealing with that for years and he's well capable of it. But again, like Enda said, once they keep their discipline and they try and stay being patient, accepting that they're probably not going to score 119, 120 this week, that it's okay to go and score 14, 15 points, because the way Fermanagh are set up is unlikely they'll outscore them.
And it feels with the Munster final between Cork and Kerry on Saturday night, it'll be an easier game to review than preview, because we'll have a far better sense of actually how much of the hype around both sides we can believe, whether Cork are on the road back and whether this young Kerry side are the real deal. Is your sense from watching Kerry, from the early brilliance we've seen from Sean O'Shea, that actually this team are getting closer to Dublin, that even though there might have been initially an expectation that with these young players we might have a couple of years of transition, that they could be right there already?
I think it's unfair to start putting any sort of relatively new team that maybe hasn't done an awful lot, and I suppose everybody is trying to cling on to any shoot at all that some team will be ready to take on Dublin. We've seen it last year with Tyrone, where all the talk was Tyrone's going to take them on. Then other people, now we're looking at Kerry, and it's everybody wants a bit of hope to cling to, that there is going to be a real proper challenger to Dublin. Have Kerry the quality up front? I think without a doubt they've the most exciting full forward line. Well, Dublin have a brilliant full forward line too, but that's one of the best full forward lines that we've seen in the game in a long time. The big question mark is defensively. Dublin are superb defensively. They have got both teak tough defenders, real battle hardened boys that know where the line is and when and where to tiptoe across it. And defensively, they're exceptionally solid. So they have that part of their game nailed. Their forward, their attacking talent will always speak for itself at the minute. Kerry undoubtedly have their equal in attacking talent, and that's saying something. I just don't think defensively they're going to be there yet.
We're getting very excited about this Kerry full forward line of Gainey and O'Donoghue and Clifford, and then you throw Sean O'Shea in with the likes of Stephen O'Brien in there, and all that attacking talent. But still, in last year's All-Ireland semi-final, Tyke Morley, Shane Enright, these players were exposed by the Mayo forward line. We're not really talking about Kerry and improvements they've made there. Have you seen enough from Kerry to suggest that overall, even with this injection of youth in the forward line, that defensively, tactically, they're going to be better this year?
I think they have to be, and I actually think they'll be one of the teams that will really benefit from the additional games this year in the Super 8s, because what you want, particularly with younger guys like that, when you're trying to embed them in and you're trying to tweak what you're doing tactically, you want games to do it in. And particularly Kerry in the past have come up, they'd win Munster, they'd come out, they might have a quarter final, and it could be a semi-final before, and that probably suited them when they had that experienced team, and the team knew exactly what to expect. But with a younger team now, if they they'll have a good game against Cork this Saturday evening, and they'll likely have 3 more games then following in the quarter-final.
Is that actually a big difference for young players, that the intense pressure when you get to the All-Ireland series is sort of gone a little bit, because you could potentially lose the game and still progress?
Exactly, and again, the learning you might get from that, whereas in the past, again, like they might have come up, won a quarter final, and then if they did face Dublin in a semi-final, get within a couple of points, or even a Mayo, and they might get within a couple of points, but then you have a year to wait and you're kind of going starting from scratch again, whereas you might get that learning a little bit earlier this year, and it might be something to name of tomorrow's. And again, you've talked about the forward talent, but again, it'll allow them to look, they left their defenders very exposed last year against Mayo. It was one-on-one. I'd say Andy Moore, and I'd say couldn't believe his luck. And you look at that then this year, you'd imagine Eamon Fitzmaurice is looking at it and saying, one, we either need better guys who can match up one-on-one better, or else we need to help them. We need to put a system in place that gives them a little bit more protection without sacrificing what we like to do when we're attacking, you know. So that's why I do think that the more games this year for Kerry, I think it'll help them add to their squad, and they'll find out quicker who is ready for the level that they need. Cork
are getting excited about Luke Connolly, 10 points in the semi-final win over Tip. Where are they? Is this revival something we can believe in?
It's hard to know. Like they had a massive win against Tipperary, in fairness to them, and Luke Connolly, he's brought his club form. He was brilliant for Nemo Rangers all the way through the club championship, through the Munster championship and the All-Ireland series, and he's a pure scorer. He's a lot of skill, and but Cork have had good forwards in the past. You think, when I say in the past, even Colm O'Neill, and they've guys like that, and it's probably more around the middle third. They've had such a transition between, when you think of the likes of the midfield they used to have with Alan O'Connor and Canty and these guys around there, they probably haven't replaced them, and I think that's where you've seen probably an influx. And Cork, it's a good challenge for them Saturday night, because it'll give them a test of where they are. There's probably, the win against Tipperary was probably a bit more straightforward than they expected it to be, and I think I'll be interested to see how they go Saturday night. 8
football qualifiers on over the course of the weekend as well. We'll have reporters at all of them, analysis to come on Saturday and Sundays off the ball. If there's to be one upset, Mossy, where's it going to be in the qualifiers?
I don't know that there's going to be many, to be honest. I think most of them look pretty straightforward. As in, there's a couple that are 50-50, but I don't know what you'd consider an upset.
Could Sligo trouble Armagh?
I don't think so, no. I think Armagh will come through that pretty comfortably. Again, the Longford-Kildare game, it depends what way you'd see that. I'd imagine it's fairly close to call. I'd fancy Longford to come through that, but possibly come through that. But I think some of them are pretty straightforward. Monaghan, Tyrone, Cavan, Mayo, I think are all going to come through. So I think it might be the following round that you might see a couple of games like that.
And before we let you go, your thoughts on the qualifiers and whether there might be a giant killing somewhere along the way?
Yeah, I think the big teams have avoided each other up till now. I think again this weekend I expect most games to go according to plan. Kildare Longford is probably the closest one to call, especially up there in Longford. For me, it's all about that third round draw, because if the big hitters, and I suppose I'm talking about the Division 1 sides that are in the qualifiers, Mayo, Kildare, Tyrone and Monaghan, they can potentially still avoid each other in that third round draw, but the likelihood is some of them's going to be paired off against each other. If they get a good draw, if them teams get a good draw, looking at the provincial losers, Cork possibly, Fermanagh possibly, Laois and Roscommon, all of them big teams that are sitting in the qualifiers would be quite happy to take on one of them teams in the fourth round qualifiers and make it to the Super 8, you know. So that third round draw for me is probably make or break, because if they get through that, I think the way the championship has worked out this year, I'm not sure the provincial runners-up are going to be as strong as what's coming through the qualifiers.
And great stuff. As always, enjoy the Ulster final. Sounds feisty. I will most certainly be tuning in. Mossy, thanks a lot for joining us in studio. Enjoy the weekend. As I say, we'll have full coverage here on Saturday and Sunday on Off the Ball. It is still Argentina 0, Croatia 1, 10 minutes remaining in that game, and really at the moment Croatia looked the more likely to score a second goal in that game. Oh, and they've just scored it. Luka Modric with a cracker, 25 yards out, just to the right of centre, bends it low and hard past Willie Caballero. Luka Modric, you boy. Football Show with John Giles coming up at 9. We're going to take a quick break.
GAA on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by the Boyle Sports app. Cash out and in-play betting available in the App Store and Google Play Store.
News Talk Breakfast.
This is a headache for the prison service. The difficulty is his very presence, because a lot of people in the prison system would see him as would have an excuse to, well, we'll show him. So he would have to be protected. So inevitably what's going to happen to David Drummond, this is no reflection on him, but he will find himself in the company of some of our most notorious and isolated prisoners, because he will be separated. He will have to be segregated from the rest